is flowing. Welcome to episode 24. Today's featured guest is Edward Viduarre. He is the 2018-2019 McAllen, Texas Poet Laureate and author of 6 collections of poetry. I Took My Barrio on a Road Trip through Sloth Press 2013, Insomnia through El Zarapi Press 2014, Beautiful Scars Elegiac Beat Poems through El Zarapi Press 2015, Chicano Blood Transfusion, Flowersong Press 2016, and Ramona and Rumi, Love in the Time of Oligarchy, and Unedited Necessary Poems through Hercules Publishing 2018, JazzHouse through Prickly Pear Press 2019, and forthcoming from Kingshot Press, When a City Ends. Vidaurre has published in several literary journals and anthologies. He was also the Director of Operations in 2018 for the Valley International Poetry Festival, moderator for Poets Responding, and founder of Pasta Poetry and Vino, a reading series in the Rio Grande Valley. He is a 2-time Pushcart Prize nominee and resides in McAllen. He writes from the front lines of Mexican-American borderlines of El Valle in South Tejas, born and raised in Boyle Heights, California. Please welcome my next featured guest, Edward Viduarre.
Hi, Edward. Welcome to the show.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm honored you wanted to be on your Artsy Girl podcast. But before we talk about your work, I would like to get to know you a little more. Can you tell us where you were born and where you grew up?
Sure. I grew up in Boyle Heights, which is East Los Angeles, California, 1973. I guess you could call it, I grew up in the projects. And if you would, the poorest housing projects west of the Mississippi. So it was a tough neighborhood. I'm not going to lie. But it taught me a lot, and I took a lot from it, of course, blessed that I survived it.
Yeah.
But it's just something that comes back to me now in memories that I can put into words. At the time, it was more a thing of, surviving it. But now I'm able to look back and, it seems like another lifetime. Totally different from my life now here in Texas.
Now, you grew up during the time frame where there's the whole gang violence over there, right?
Yeah, I lived through the Rodney King, the trial, the riots, the LA riots. There was the decade of death over there when the crack epidemic hit.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. I look back at all that, and there was a lot of things that you look at everything that makes the news, and you'll say to yourself, "Man, that's horrible." But I've got a lot of great memories too from growing up there. So
when did you discover poetry or writing, and when did that happen for you?
Well, let me tell you, I was just going through the motions in school. I don't remember much about what I did in school or how I did in school. I just kind of just showed up and every year just went to a new grade level. But not until I hit high school did I mean, unfortunately for me, I waited till high school to really want to know a little bit more. But I remember I was being real resistant towards Shakespeare with my English teacher in high school. And I was more of the, trying to get attention in school, being the class clown and stuff like that. And I remember telling her in the middle of her talk about Shakespeare, saying, we don't talk like that in my neighborhood. Like, why do we need to know this? Nobody talks like that. It's garbage. And she, pulled me outside and said, I don't care if you want to learn about Shakespeare or not, but you're not going to disrupt my class. She said, and I said, what? I want to know something more about my experience. Why can't I, read about things that are happening now, something I can relate to? And she told me, I'm going to have a book for you tomorrow. And and I still have that book here with me.
No way.
It's Man-Child in the Promised Land by Claude Brown.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a modern, it's a classic Black experience, and the book's about, the kid pulling himself out of, the ghetto. He was in gang wars. It was crime, drugs and all that. And I'm like, I can relate to all that. It's in my neighborhood, And so reading the book, it took me a while too to read it, because I just, my mind would just wander. So I would read a few pages and then look back and go, what did I just read? But the story was so compelling that I would go back because I didn't want to miss any details. And so I remember it took me a while to read the book. And I always kept it with me. And not until after high school, when I started working, I used to catch the bus from East LA to Beverly Hills. I used to work in Beverly Hills. And I would see people on the bus, and people would be reading, whether it was a newspaper, a book. I would just sit and, look out the window and look at the, graffiti scribbled on the windows and, stuff like that. And it just clicked, I have to read, I want to read. I want to, go back to my book. So I read Man-Child in the Promised Land, on my way to work one day. And after that, I just said, okay, now I have to read something else. So I was looking for something that was similar to that. And so I fell into Black literature. I didn't know there was voices out there with about us, about brown people. And so I picked up Claude Brown. I was introduced to Richard Wright. And I fell in love with, Black Boy and Native Son. And again, had to read them over and over again to get the gist of it and to really understand it. I started reading that, picked up Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, as much as I could. And then I walked into a bookstore and they had, on display, Always Running by Luis Rodriguez. And I picked it up and I started reading it and I was like, what? It's like, this guy is talking about what I know and he's my color. And it just, I was like, wow. So I read it. And so the way I fell into poetry was that I started digging more into these authors that I loved. And I noticed that almost all of them had a poetry collection somewhere in their writing. Richard Wright had a collection of haiku. Luis Rodriguez had Concrete River. And, it was just, I was just like, wow. But it wasn't so much the poetry at the time that introduced me to poetry, but it just introduced me to literature. And I love the style of poetry. I've always been one for mushy writings. And I love lyrics. My earlier influences are Smokey Robinson, Jose Alfredo Jimenez. These are the storytellers in music. Yeah. And I just I always wanted to get down to the nitty gritty of who wrote that song. So when I hear someone like Luis Miguel sing a song, I want to know, did he write it? And if not, who wrote it? And what else do they write? So I want to know what else are they writing? So I always got into it. And that's why I loved hip hop, and rap music so much, because they sampled music. And I don't know if you remember, but the cassette tape. Oh yeah. Always had those.
I'm a few years older than you.
you
but we're in the neighborhood.
but you would fold out the paper inside the cassette tape,
right?
And it would have the lyrics to all the rap songs. And so I would like to, I wanted to, rap along to the songs. And I also, when I loved the beat, on the bottom it always said, music sample from this, from that. So then that's when I, was introduced to Zapp and Parliament and George, and all of Funkadelic and all that. And I was like, okay. And then when you go into those, and before you know it, you're going way back, and that's where my love for jazz came in too, because a lot of them were sampling, jazz notes, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, John Coltrane. And so I always wanted to get to the root of, their inspiration, because what made them great? You got to give thanks to those that, they sampled. So I would find myself going back to some really old music and digging it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I started reading and getting on the bus to go to work. And I was reading newspapers, magazines, books, and just crazy. Like, I went through a phase where I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die before I could read all the books I ever want to read.
Oh,
And
yes.
think of it. I mean, yeah. And now I collect books all the time, and I'm like, and I always go back to the ones I love. I always go back to the ones that have already made an impression or have already done something for me, because I know that I'm going to read it and it's not going to fail me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's my old standby. I'm always going to go back to Man Child in the Promised Land. I'm always going to go back to, a bunch of different books, that have done something for me. But
Right.
I always dig in and try to read new things, especially when people talk about it in social media, like, oh, this is what I'm reading. So sometimes I like to post that up there, like, what are you guys reading right now? Mm-hmm. And they start to say it, and I write it down, and then I go and look for it, or I look for samples of their poetry online, and if it's something that I'm digging, then I'll probably get the book, or I'll go to the library, and see if they have it, and rent, get it out, and
Sure.
keep it
So
for like a year.
when you talk about jazz, your love for jazz, and then your new collection is called JazzHouse. So
Right.
Can you tell us a little more about that collection?
Yeah, JazzHouse came when I moved into my house now.
Mm-hmm.
I've always lived in, I've always rented, apartments or homes, and finally, got a house.
Congratulations. Yes.
Did the adult thing, and got the house, and so I wanted, there was always jazz playing in the house, just whether, if we're in the kitchen, if we're in the living room, whether I'm, folding laundry or just hanging out, reading a book, there's always something like a slow, some cool jazz going. So, everything around my writing around that time was with jazz as a background. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, this is my house, my jazz house. And so the book is, it's like, I guess you could call it, everyday life poems, things that are, routine, things that are going on in my life. It's like my vulnerability with, jazz as a soundtrack.
I hear you. That sounds awesome. And then your previous collection to that, now, I want to know more, because the title really intrigues me. Ramona and Rumi, Love in the Time of Oligarchy, and Unedited Necessary Poems.
Okay. So Ramona and Rumi came to me as I wanted to write about a couple. I wanted to create two characters and write poems about them meeting, and I didn't know where it was going to take me. It takes me to, the last poem of Ramona and Rumi, where Rumi passes on. He's on to, another world, and, Ramona stays back. But during that time, they go through a lot. They experience, ups and downs, and, infidelities and different things, but they're still, doing things. And it's got a little bit of, border stories along there too. I have a poem there. It's called The Saddest Song, In Search for the Saddest Song. So it's still, there's still that imprint of my life in their story. And so I take these two characters with me in short poems and give them, life and make them, do things throughout the book. And the second part of the book, the unedited necessary poems, I challenged myself to write love poetry while listening to heavy metal.
No way.
Right. Yeah. So I'll put the title I'll put the title of the song and the artist, and then what came from listening to that song, and I with headphones on, really loud, and just challenged myself. And they came out a little more erotic than they did, loving.
I bet it did.
Right. So And
so what is some of the heavy metal songs? Just give me a couple of ones. White Snake.
well, there's Fear Factory, there's Metallica, there's some, there's a really long one that's 72 minutes, and it's Mystical Vargad Orchestra, the key to the gates of the apocalypses. That's a 72-minute song. It's like ridiculous, but and it's a really short poem, so it didn't give me much. But I've got some classic metal there, like Cream's White Room's there, Audio Slave.
That's crazy. Wow. So these are very refreshing takes on, like almost like an exercise you kind of like do.
Right. And well, let me tell you, the thing is that I've never been to an MFA program. I like I said, I graduated high school. I've never been to college. So I've had to teach myself by reading poetry, and just reading and just trying to figure it out. Now I have friends that'll look at my poetry and give me feedback. But at the beginning, it was just me doing it, just whatever comes.
And we all started there,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I'm always trying to look for new ways. There's something, that I just think is original. Yeah. But still using a little, influence from things that are already going on. I might want to do a collection of Sestinas one day by, I don't know, and then put something else in there as an inspiration to do it, just like I did with the heavy metal. And I thought of doing poetry with Pink Floyd lyrics as the titles, because they have like the best. They have like some really cool song titles,
right?
And so I thought of all that, and just continue to do it. When I have writer's block, I dedicate myself to writing haiku, because it's short, and it makes me use nature, and it makes me use the seasons, and so I try to do that, or I'll just read, and wait for inspiration from a word, or sometimes I like sitting at a coffee shop and listening to people.
Yes.
Just I listen to people. I eavesdrop. I listen to children, when they're talking, because, they say things, my daughter said something once where she said, something about, I'm trying to think, he hurt so much, he threw up his heart or something like that. Oh. And I wrote it down. I actually wrote it down. I have it somewhere because I wanted to use it as a quote for a book one day. But she says things, and sometimes it's just their imagination going, wild. They might have thought they heard something that they didn't, and they say it. And so that sometimes becomes something. So like, I always pay attention, because I always think that you can find an epic line to your next poem from something else, from listening or just being inspired by what somebody said, and it might trigger a sentence, it might trigger a stanza, it might trigger a title of a poem. But you just always have to be aware, just always aware. I'm always paying attention, and I have something to write with handy, because I don't want to miss it. So it's like I'm a word catcher. You
touch base on a very important thing, I think, for most writers and poets, is that most of our material, it comes from life, and that's where we have to mine it. That's exactly what you're doing, is like mining through life situation, words, and it becomes a piece of art once you start, weaving it in and doing your magic. It's a beautiful thing.
It's like I was reading Patricia Smith's Blood Dazzler. and it has to do with Katrina when it hit New Orleans. And I'm going through the poems and I'm reading them, and I'm like, man, it's like this is just so smart. This is just such a great, collection of things that happen, the timeline of during Katrina and the storm coming and everyday things, a dog tied to a tree that they leave behind, and hey, he'll get through it. He always gets through rain,
Right.
and it's like, wow, to think of those things and write about them and also use, I guess, inspiration from whatever emergency emails went out, and then going from there, taking that and then creating something else to go with it, kind of like ekphrastic poetry.
But so I understand you have your own press?
Yeah, Flowersong Books.
Flowersong Books.
Yeah. Joe Reyes Boitel is published through me.
Yes.
And also Eduardo Vega from San Antonio and Carolina Hinojosa Cisneros. There's a few, and then some more coming up. Gris Munoz from El Paso, Matt Cedillo from Los Angeles.
When did you start the press?
Well, let me tell you about the press. The press was originally founded by David Bowles. And he published my collection, Chicano Blood Transfusion. And one day I was talking to him and I asked him, who are you going to publish next? And he's been super busy with just writing, young adult novels and this and that. And he was kind of going to take a break from it because he was so busy. And I said, hey, man, if I can do it, I can take over if you're too busy. And so he said, go for it, and just handed it over, and trusted me with it. And since then, I believe we've published in the last, I've had it since 2018, and we've published about 5 authors.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are your before we go on to talk about your current projects and future goals, do you have any poems you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I'd like to share maybe a new poem. And how many poems would you like me to read for you?
Oh, well, I'm not going to put a limit. Just go ahead and do what you feel.
Okay, I'll read a new poem that I wrote, and I wrote this during June, during Pride Month. And I also, and you'll see a lot of my new writing has a lot to do with, here in the Rio Grande Valley with what's going on with the border issues and the children coming over. So I have a little bit of that, intertwined with it. And then I'll read from JazzHouse. This one is titled Man of Woman. I draw from wind and rain and sounds of birds. I chant to the earth and ask for permission to cultivate. I am not the handyman or plumber nor gardener. I don't fix cars or holes in walls. I am from the teachings of a woman. I nurture and fight. I fold clothes and rearrange. I use knives for cutting food. I use my hands to hold and caress. My lips kiss and proclaim. I am a man of woman, lover of music and poetry. I am not a mechanic or painter. I chase winds and rolling rivers. I speak in soft tones. I have a fire inside that changes colors. I drink blue waters and smell flowers. I am not the head of any household. I hold home in the bursting of sweat and tears. I work to give jobs to bakers. I work to give jobs to farmers. I work to heal a community. I draw from wind and rain and sounds of birds. I chant to the earth and ask for permission to cultivate. I don't need the title of man, just the respect of being human. I draw and write songs. I raise my fist and voice when necessary, and make love to a woman when and only her lips and eyes say in unison, "Take me to your heart." I do not dangle my mustache or muscles or grease stains or callous hands for better wages and respect. I draw from wind and rain and sounds of birds. I chant to the earth and ask for permission to cultivate. I am not a doctor or scientist. I am a poet, a man of simplicity, on borrowed time, a reader of melting metaphors. I am a child, a man that designs and births translations of mind and feelings, a man that holds his mother's grief in the folds of his eyes. I am not your Prince Charming. I am not your rebel or gangster, even less so your soldier. I am a father, son, and brother. I am ashes of brown and red spirits. I am man of woman, of hibiscus blood veins, earth-blessed eyes and tongue. I was raised by a woman to be boiling water and a teacher, a boy who grew up knowing basic colors and ignored the muses, spellbound and invisible, a man of smoke and thought, a man of ancestral color and no color, with feminine vibrations and masculine hunger. I am not that man that makes you love, but helps you love yourself, because I was raised by a woman of incandescent passion, a woman that always found a way out of loss, a woman who invited life and revolutionized a boy's history. I draw from wind and rain and sounds of birds. I chant to the earth and ask for permission to cultivate.
Wow. Wow. I love that. And it's just got such musicality, and I love the repetition. It really brings you in. Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And so I'll read from a JazzHouse. This title is Neighborhoods. I grew up on a concrete bed of oil-spilled asphalt, moved to a motorhome community next to Compton's iconic rap scene, back to a neighborhood south of East LA, and into the meticulous and well-trimmed landscaping of Beverly Hills, back to the heart of Boyle Heights, and now Texas. In all my life, I never really appreciated the murals and community chants of brown pride. Instead, I struggled with identity of Chicanismo, Guanaco, Pinche Pocho, etc. Today, I live one block north of the historic part of town, where two houses to my right, kids spill onto the street while their mamas sit on beach chairs drinking and smoking. The neighbor, an electrician, and we play jazz while we cook breakfast and drink fizzy water. I drive down the street. There is a beautiful, imperfect home, decrepit, and veins running down her back. The rewiring of many years and many residents later. All that is left is chipped paint, an achy roof with broken shingles, the clogged arteries of the wood-framed home, and windows that resemble a frightened look. Inside, a low tune from a radio, a classic love song, a Mexican tune about her eyes and lips that went untouched.
Wow. That was awesome. Do you have one more?
Sure.
Okay.
Titled City of God. I woke up with the weight of my beard across my body. It had grown down to my feet. It was thick and coarse. There were people living on it. From the braid on my chest, I could smell the food they were cooking. Down by my waist, my beard had the shape of hills with goats and other animals running around. I saw giants by my ankles, gentle and helping little people move up from the sheets by my feet. I sneezed and lost a race of people to the right side of my knees, where down below my cap ate them all. Quickly from my mouth emerged millions of babies that crawled to the open land where those same people fell off. By afternoon, a city was built, and by nightfall, the violence began. I closed my eyes, and a darkness fell over them all. In my slumber, I could hear cries, moans, and whispers of bad intentions. If this continues, I will shave in the morning, keeping only a mustache where across my lips dwell a goddess, and a man.
Wow. Thank you. That was awesome. That was so visual. What are your current projects and goals?
Right now, I'm putting together a youth anthology as poet laureate of the city of McAllen. This is going to be the second of the series. We had one last year, and the new one will be out in the next month. And my book, When a City Ends, will be out hopefully in the winter by King Shot Press out of Portland.
Okay.
And I'm also working on publishing other folks. Like I said, we've got some new titles coming up, and just gonna start working on maybe just getting ready for AWP in San Antonio next year. We want to, be a nice presence there since it's going to be so close to home.
I know. I think I'm going to have to try to make it out there.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Huh. So you are a poet laureate at you said McAllen County?
McAllen, Texas.
Texas, rather. McAllen, Texas.
Yes.
Okay. So, and how long is that post?
It was from 2018 to the end of this year, 2019.
Oh, great.
It's a 2 year. Yeah, 2 year. So yeah, it's been exciting. Just being busy with it, and being able to visit schools and do a lot of community readings when asked, things like that. So it's been fun. I mean, I've been doing what I've always been doing, so it's felt good. But doing the anthology with the kids, the grade school kids, was fun. Getting them to write, getting librarians and teachers involved, and parents. It's important work because the kids are I always say the kids are the truth sayers.
Yes.
So I tell them when I visit them at schools, it's important that you write because you are writing the history of where you're living at the present moment. And when they find your writings 50, 60, 100 years from now, they'll find the writings and know what the people were talking about, not so much what's in the news or documentaries that'll be made with what's going on here, but they'll find the writings of the people and say, this doesn't match. It seems like they were having a good time down here. They and that's something that's really important to me, that yes, there is a lot of things to talk about with what's going on along the border, but we start to lose the focus on the beauty of what we have. We have beautiful things. We forget that we can write about our culture, we can write about our music, our foods, our traditions, our Sunday family gatherings or friendships and stuff like that, and nature, especially down here. Nature, we have so many birds and butterflies and flowers and trees and different species of so many things, and so we need to go back to that. And I think especially when we're so mad and so angry at what's going on in the news and with the politics, that I think as writers, if we take a step back sometimes and focus on those beautiful things, that we can heal too from that anxiety. Because I've never been so anxious and so angry in my life as I have been in the last 2 years.
Right.
And I grew up in projects. And I grew up in projects, right? And I've been shot at, and it's and then the bullets have missed, but it's not. I mean, this is crazy,
I know, but
so
hey, listen,
do need to heal.
Perhaps maybe a child, just like you, or young, and looking for someone to identify with, will do so in your work. So that's I think that would definitely come full circle. Definitely.
That would be awesome.
Where can people go to learn more about you and your work? Your website?
I have the Flowersong Books website, but they can. I mean, I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, I'll post.
Yeah.
I'll post that
find
in
me
the
there.
show notes. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Edward. It's been great talking to you and learning more about you and your work. I wish you the very best of luck with everything. You sound like you're doing some great, important work, and just keep doing what you're doing, because we definitely need it in this time. Especially.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, everyone, that is it for now. Please tune in next week for my next featured guest. In the meantime, have a productive and creative week. Bye, Edward.
Bye-bye.